Hey guys, welcome to the RAMZPAUL show. It is Thursday, January 23rd. I had to look at the date. January 23rd. I hope you guys are all doing well. We're slowly starting to warm up in Arkansas. Last week was pretty bitter. We got down to 5 degrees, which is pretty cold in these parts. So it's not exactly hot today. It's supposed to get up to 36 Fahrenheit, but it feels a lot better. So slowly we're going to get more into normal temperatures. Yeah, there's a lot of stuff to discuss. It's just been crazy, all the stuff with Trump. I've been excited. Trump has done a lot more than I thought he would. So I thought we'd go over some of the news of the day. And thank you for being here. And I stream the Ramsey Paul show on 3 platforms always. And also Happy Homelands and Night Owls. I do it on YouTube, and if you want to interact on YouTube, I have super chats. And in fact, the last show I felt bad, not Happy Homelands, but the one before, I got a generous super chat from Killakami for Mommy for $20, and thank you, Killakami. I Killakami for Mommy. I remember that for years. He used to watch my videos years ago. So thank you, Killakami. And he wrote, not sure if you touched on this one. Trump also designated the Mexican cartel as terrorist. Yeah, we were talking about some of the great executive orders and designating the cartels as a foreign terrorist organization. It does give Trump some more flexibility on how he moves forward. And we could even send special forces into Mexico to help deal with these cartels, which, the purpose of a military should be to protect our people, not running around fighting for Israel or fighting for Ukraine. It should be for our people. And so I support that notion. Mexico is pretty much a failed state. In Mexico City, they don't really control northern Mexico. The cartels do. I mean, officially they do, but in reality, they don't. And we have no obligation to put up with that just because across the border for them to do these criminal activities. So Trump, I think that's part of the reason he designated it as a foreign terrorist organization. And I would be fine striking those groups. And again, I'm not an interventionist. I don't want us to get in wars in Ukraine or Russia, or definitely not in Israel or Gaza or Iran. But when it's on our borders, we have a stake and we have a reason to use the military. So I agree, Killakami for Mommy. I think that was a very good that was really good thing here. And then I missed a super chat last night, and we'll go over this next Happy Homelands. This was Happy Homelands. It's Donald Joy. Remember the start of Trump's first term? Richard Spencer said, "Hail Trump" in his speech, and some guy in the crowd was Sieg heiling the Hitler salute. Yeah, I do remember that. And this all comes about because Elon Musk, he was at, you guys probably saw it, he was talking to an audience and he said, "My heart went out to you," and he placed his hand on his heart and he threw his arm out, like throwing his heart out to the audience. But because it looked like, it could be a Nazi salute, and that's what all the shit libs went with. But the good thing is people are, I think, really getting tired of this, because if you're going to make that claim, you can make that claim about basically anyone of how you happen to hold your hand. And the bigger point is, who in the hell do these people think they are that can tell us what angle we're allowed to raise our arms? Fuck them. Fuck them. We have control over our own bodies. These are the same people that think you have a right to kill your 9-month-old baby in the womb because it's your body. Well, it's not your body, it's the baby's body. But the same people that say that says, you can have your hand like at this angle and you can have it down below, but it can't go above waist high. I mean, who's to say that? I mean, really, fuck that. And you could, there's been a lot of things. Let me just show you one. the hypocrisy. You could use this on the left forever. Here's Tim Walz. He placed his hand in his heart, and look at it. He's doing a Nazi salute. Watch this. Nazi salute. Obviously he's not, but it's almost the exact same thing that Elon Musk did. So the point is, and what reasonable people understand, and these people, they're either stupid or they're just evil, or maybe both. Because a reasonable person will say, okay, if you do a gesture, what's your meaning behind it? Was Elon Musk actually secretly advocating that he supports Adolf Hitler, who's been dead 80 years, and the German National Socialist Party? I don't think so. I don't think that's really reasonable to assume that's what he meant by that. But these people on the left, these woke people, their brains are broken, and they see these weird conspiracy signals and weird signs. It kind of reminds me of the OK sign that's been around forever. Just means okay. And somehow, some kids on 4chan decided to troll people and say, oh, that means white power. It doesn't. It never did. But people believe that. But the bigger point is, why should we allow people to determine what we do with our hands or gestures, right? And getting back to Richard Spencer, the problem with Richard Spencer, he should have just said at the time, no, I wasn't doing a Sieg Heil to Hitler or anything like that. I was just saying, hail Trump. It had nothing to do with Hitler. That's all he had to really say, but he really didn't do that. And at that point, Spencer was starting. It's sort of a sad path that a lot of these people go down on the right. And I'm not sure why. I have a theory why this happens. But there's a purity spiral that happens in our circles too. And so, for example, you start out with someone like Richard Spencer, and I knew him. I spoke at his events, and he started out as he's an intelligent man. He's very well spoken. Personally, he's kind of an asshole, but he's a well-spoken, intelligent guy, and I had nothing against him. And I thought, well, this is great. He's a good face of speaking for us. And he wasn't that radical, really. He started out kind of as a normie Republican. Then he understood about the race issue. And, he was a little... He fashioned himself as a deep thinker, even though I never thought of himself as being super bright. I mean, he's not dumb, but, he's not... He never was what he wanted to be as this brilliant thinker. But he was still okay. But what happened then, he got surrounded by people that kept pushing him like, oh, you can't be a cock. You got to go more and more to be a Nazi. And that's always a problem in our sphere, is there's legitimate issues we want to talk about, like the influence of Israel over our country. I've spoken about that forever. I'm always on Tom Cotton. I think he's a traitor, really. He's taking foreign money. And you can discuss that issue without becoming obsessive about it. And you can discuss right-wing interest without being stuck on a foreign group that existed 80 years ago. I mean, why do we keep going back to that? But there's a poll, we get our own purity spiral, like, oh, well, if you're going to be the cool kid, you gotta go super far right. That happened with Richard Spencer. He was really influenced by Andrew Anglin, who I don't think is legit, and the Daily Storm, or whoever was funding that. It wasn't Anglin. And they were pushing like, oh no, the alt-right or the new right, that's all about Nazism. And Spencer sadly went down that road, and you saw the result. Now he's kind of rejected that ever since he lost all those lawsuits based on Charlottesville. Now he's kind of a shit lib, I guess. I don't know. I don't follow him. But it's sad because a very similar thing has happened with Nick Fuentes. Nick Fuentes, ironically, broke from Spencer. He was at Charlottesville, but Nick Fuentes, his thing was, hey, we got to have better optics, and we got to be grounded, let's say, in Christianity. Whereas Spencer's problem, he's like an atheist. So we got to get into Christianity, and then specifically Catholicism. And I'm not against that. I think in a sense it's good to be grounded with a religious worldview. It becomes a problem a little bit because this country was mostly Protestant. Like it or not, it was. And you're going to alienate a lot of people if you just focus on Catholicism. I don't get in religious debates really, but that's part of the issue. But still, it's okay. Nick was all about, we need to be professional. We can't dress up in cringy costumes. You can't do these salutes, hail Trump or anything like that. And because they ended up in the old alt-right, it started out as kind of like a paleocon movement with pretty people that had ideas that were popular, that are mainstream now. A lot of what we see now in the Trump administration is what we would have called the alt-right a few years ago. Keep jobs in America. Let's don't get into foreign wars. Let's don't hate on white people. This basic stuff most people can get behind. And that was the alt-right differentiated itself from the corporate conservative Inc., like the George Bush and those types who just worried about corporate tax breaks. And it was very successful. But then unfortunately, you got the people in there started to take it into a weird direction and say, no, it's not about that. It's about Nazism and it's about dressing up like Nazis. And then you got that, even Richard Spencer, one of his lieutenants, Sol Invictus, was a mentally ill man that literally changed his name to like the everlasting sun god. And he thought he was a Roman emperor and he would sacrifice goats and drink their blood. I mean, obviously, I shouldn't have to say that's off. That's just a fucking weirdo. And so we really had a weirdo problem. Matt Heimbach dressed up like he was in the SA or something. And then he got in his father-in-law was like, he was fucking his father-in-law's wife or something, and he got in a fight with his father-in-law at the trailer park. It spilled into Walmart. Obviously, these are all bad optics, and Fuentes was right, saying we got to get away from those optics. But unfortunately, you see the path of Fuentes. He just ended up going down the same road with like Kanye West and the Git Mask, praising Hitler. And then it became, the problem isn't just a certain ethnic group, it's also women and this boomers, and it just became this weird sort of cult. And we see today where that is. And it's sad that's happened. So, and I've always said the more important thing isn't really optics. It's more like character. You have people that have good character that you can rely on, aren't going to go nuts and start to do goofy things. I gave a speech at Ameren, and I always said that's one thing I've always admired about Jared Taylor is you don't have to worry about him behaving in a very strange manner. And I think that is important. So that's it. Damian Thorne, Americans used to do the Bellamy salute every morning before World War II. Yes. And you know who used to do that salute every day was my father when he was a child. He remembers in school, he was a little kid at the time. But to salute the American flag, you would do what we would call the Nazi salute. And it's interesting because they changed it then because Hitler got in power. And this was actually, right before when, the war had started, but we weren't in the war. And my dad was like first grade. And they changed the salute for your hand to be palms up, but the same type of salute. And then that was just brief, he said. Then they did the hand over the heart salute. So that was the case. And of course, the Romans had the salute too. So again, what is important, reasonable people understand is what the context of what you're doing is. And that is the important thing. But good point on that. I do appreciate that. Let's see here. ETNM, glad to see you back on the 11 a.m. I missed the morning shows. Yeah, I decided to, get back to doing these. I'm still going to do my Friday show. Tomorrow night is Friday. Yeah, Friday's tomorrow. I'm going to still do my Friday RAMZPAUL shows at night because I want to do at least one show a week at night. Well, I do Happy Homelands, but I'm going to do a RAMZPAUL show at night too, just because some people can't watch it live during the day. So, but I'm going back to these shows on the other days, I think. So, I miss them too. So I decided to talk about it. And so thank you, ETNM, for that super chat. And let's see here. We'll just kind of freeform it today. Um, yeah, so we got one of the issues is, and let me just see if I can find this one. Uh, yeah, we had a school shooter in Nashville yesterday, and here he is, and his name was Solomon Henderson, and as you can see, he's black. uh, but what's interesting about this is he posted a manifesto, and I looked at the manifesto briefly, and it looks like it was legit. Obviously, he's kind of he's a disturbed young man. Even though he was black, he didn't like blacks, and he followed Nick Fuentes and of all people, Ethan Ralph. He didn't follow many people, but those were a couple he followed, and he was kind of I'm not saying he was, what a groiper is. It's not an official organization, but I think he would classify him as a groiper. He was an incel. He talked about that. And so, he had all the memes, like nothing ever happens. And this is obviously your whole, if your thing that you're creating movement is attracting a lot of like homosexuals or blacks or something like that, you've probably gone off the wrong, the right track, right? And so I'm not blaming Nick Fuentes on this guy, but this is what I call the weirdo problem is that, and it's difficult to police, I understand this, but you get a lot of disturbed individuals that kind of glob onto things. So it seems pretty strange here. This black guy was identifying with a supposedly white organization and nationalists and all that. But here we are. Here we are. And it's odd. And this is why you somehow, Z-Man long ago wrote an article called The Weirdo Problem. And there's not an easy answer to it. I mean, there is a way if you have formal groups, you can keep out what you know as weirdos. But the problem is when you have an informal, let's say, movement. I don't like the term movement. I don't know why. It doesn't sit with me right. But if you have a idea or a philosophy or whatever you want to call it, paleoconservatism or alt-right or Groiper or whatever, or MAGA. The problem is, like even MAGA, that's not an official thing you join. How do you deal with the mentally off people that identify with that, and then they claim to represent what that movement means? And that's always a very difficult thing. And I think one of the things that the leadership can do, because you can't control who follows you, right? And so I'm not blaming Fuentes or Ethan Ralph that this guy was following him. But I think you have a responsibility to say things that aren't necessarily going to put some people off the edge, because some people don't understand that. And I'm not trying to silence people or anything like that. But when you get bigger, you have somewhat of a responsibility for how you deal with things in a way that is a little bit more responsible. Otherwise, it can set off these people. Like, Nick, he always had that thing, oh, you got to rape, die, and kill for Nick Fuentes. And I know that was a tongue-in-cheek joke, but some of these people internalize it, and you get these weird results. And so, like, for example, I don't think you'd ever have Jared Taylor say, hey, if you go to American Renaissance, you got to pledge to rape, die, and kill for Jared Taylor. No. And again, I get it. Something like that is funny, I suppose, on 4chan or in a Discord server, or whatever. I get it. But again, when you get a bigger platform or you're in a leadership role, you have some responsibility there. And so that is what's happening. And the same thing, you don't want to associate yourself like Ali Alexander. allegedly he's a black or Indian, a guy that was associated with MAGA and the Groypers, that was allegedly involved with trying to groom young boys. So you got to ask yourself, why are we having a alleged black homosexual pedophile in these positions? You got to be able to look at that. Otherwise, it starts to be, what is this exactly? And I think that has been a problem. So thank you for that. And I've always considered that a tragedy because Nick Fuentes is very talented, just like Richard Spencer. And I think one of the things you always have to be is have someone to keep you humble a little bit. Because if you don't stay humble, you go down to these weird routes, and bad things happen. So it's a shame. All right, now we'll get back into some more of the MAGA and Donald Trump things here that is happening. And Trump, it keeps going. He keeps going at warp speed, which I like here. Day 3 of the Trump administration's on the book. On his third day, he completed the shutdown of all DEI offices in government and placing all existing DEI employments on indefinite leave. Now, what's happening, we got to be careful. A lot of these organizations, they're just putting their DEI person, they're not letting them go. I mean, they need to be fired. They probably should be prosecuted. But they're just changing their title. And that's the thing you got to watch out for is like, oh, okay, yeah, we don't have DEI anymore. We have some new phrase they come up with, but it's the exact same thing, meaning anti-white. We need to purge these people out, not just change their titles. So that is a part of the problem that is happening. Announced a new deployment of 1,500 active duty troops to assist in securing the U.S.-Mexico border. Again, that should be the primary function of the military, is to defend our borders. That should be job one. All the other stuff should be extra, fighting for Israel or Ukraine. That shouldn't be the issue, or fighting the Houthis. Received a commitment from the Crown Prince of Saudi Arabia to increase trade and investment in the U.S. by $600 billion. One thing about Trump, and love him or hate him, and there's some things I don't like about Trump, but he is good at deals. He is good at getting investment in the United States, and he knows how to play that up. And some of it I think is very methodical. He's not as crazy as he seems. He will put on an act and say really wild and crazy things and get people real nervous. And then he scales it back and there's a deal to be made. Just like I think he's doing a little bit with Canada. I don't really think he wants Canada as the 51st state or anything like that. He was kind of trolling Trudeau, calling him a governor. But he wants Canada, to change some of their practices, like secure the border better. Canada, because of their open border policy, there's been a lot of illegals coming through Canada too. Trump is right. It's just not Mexico. And drugs, as he said. And so Trump is saying, hey, either secure your border, Canada, or we're going to place a 25% tariff on you starting February 1st. And, he's got their attention. And it's a little bit of showmanship, but that's part of Trump. Trump's always been a showman. So I think it is effective, though. Received a commitment. We did that. Saudi Arabia. Ordered the Border Patrol to begin immediately deporting anybody caught crossing into America illegally without a hearing, ending the insane Biden policy of catching illegal crossers only to let them claim asylum and be released into America with a court date months or years in the future. Yeah, we talked about this. This is the game that people that hate white people in America, like Soros, have been doing, where they train these people to say, oh, I feel I'm politically persecuted. I'm declaring asylum. And they even gave them an app. And these people, they're just lying. They're here to just get, gimmies. So they say these magic words, or they push a button on the app, And even though we catch them, they come in illegally, we just let them run free in America, do whatever we want. And supposedly they're supposed to go back to court when they have a court date to present their case, but they never go back to court, right? They're just out and about. And that's what's called catch and release. And the left knows that. The Democrats know that. That's the point. They want to destroy our homeland. And Trump is saying, no, if you're going to declare asylum, that you need asylum, political asylum, okay, but whenever your court date is, you have to wait in Mexico or wherever you're from. You can't just come into the United States. So starting on January 20th, Trump put back the remain in Mexico policy that he had the first term, and it's almost right away solved the border problem. Most of the so-called border problem was something that the Democrats, the Biden regime, were actively doing. It was something they were really secretly pushing. I knew people in the military that said the Biden regime through El Paso were shipping in all these illegals via airplanes. So that's all stopped almost immediately. It was fairly easy. It's not that hard. So now we're not like, no, Juan or Pedro, you got to go back. You can't come in. And so that's been very effective. And I know we still have the problem of legal immigration and of H-1Bs, and those are big issues. But we got to celebrate, this is progress. This is doing something good. And I'm happy this is happening. Ordered a freeze on Department of Justice consent decrees with local police departments. Yeah, this is part of the Department of Justice under the guise of equity have been really trying to allow especially blacks to loot stores without any penalty. San Francisco, LA were part of this. And because the part of the problem is if they get tough, let's say, okay, we're not going to tolerate looting stores. And everyone's like, oh, that's good. But then when you see who gets arrested, they're all black. Then the leftist woke mind is, wow, they're all black. It must be because of white supremacy, right? Because everyone's exactly the same. So it must be you're letting white people go free and loot, and you're just arresting blacks. And the answer is like, no, the reason we're just arresting blacks because they're the only ones that are doing this. But they can't process that because that could mean there's racial differences, and that's against their religion. But it's true. So that's a key one. Had the Department of Defense commit to using military aircraft to assist in the deportation? Yeah, we flew them in on military aircraft. They can fly back to their homelands. And so this was day 3, and I'm not going to go over all the other executive orders he did, but Trump has, I think, done very well in his first few days. And I was on No White Guilt's program last night. We talked about this, and he asked me, do you think this will continue? And I'm like, well, I don't know. But I do. I think Trump has changed. I think him getting shot really changed him. I think he realizes now, and this is just my guess, but I think he realizes that he's near the end of his life. He's not getting old. He is old. He's pushing 80. He knows he's not going to be around 20 years from now. He's not eligible for re-election. I think he really wants to do the right thing, and he's not trying to make friends with people. In 2016, I think he was really he had the idea like, hey, I'm really kind of like a Clinton Democrat. That's how I was in the 90s. I'm from New York City. I just want to work with you Democrats. Let's just work together. And you saw that with his official presidential photo. He's smiling. And he really wanted to reach out and work with these people. But they did the Russian hoax on him. Soros and those organizations, they funded Antifa as domestic terrorists to burn down cities and BLM. And he really, really tried, and they just, spat in his face. This time, I think he's more wiser, and he's not looking to get their approval. He doesn't give a shit. He's just doing the right thing. As I always say, do the right thing and risk the consequences. Trump is trying to do the right thing. So I think that is a good thing. So I do think he will continue to push forward. I don't see him letting up. He could though. I'm not psychic, but I think he will. So Let's hope that happens. All right. Let's see here what we got here. This other thing, this may be overstating it a little bit, but it is interesting. Something I've talked about for a while, and most politicians haven't really talked about it, or people in general. This is the whole what happens if you no longer have a need for people. And this is Trump is funding the AI. America's 500 billion Manhattan Project is an effort to make humanity obsolete. And so they're going to spend a lot of money in AIs to try to make AIs like humans. They can do what we do. I'm not against this. I'm for technological advancement. Well, let me stop back there. I am against replacing humans. The problem is if we're able to do this, to have machines can do whatever humans can do, but better, then what are people supposed to do? And because right now we have a system, most people have to sell their labor to make money. That's how they make their money. And if they can no longer sell their labor, then are they just supposed to die? So the system really breaks. And I know for years when I brought up the problem of this, people always said, oh, well, if there's just robots, some people are going to have jobs to fix the robots. I'm like, well, maybe not. Robots may fix robots. And, or you call it a Luddite. The Luddite was the 17th century or 18th century? I think 18th century, where they were opposed to advancements in farm technology because the thoughts were, well, wait a minute, if we get all these advancements, instead of having horses and plows, you have tractors, you're going to be replacing humans. What are these humans are going to do? And it turned out, well, the humans just went to the cities and got factory jobs. So there was a big migration. Most people, hundreds of years ago, everyone worked on the farm or agriculture, most people. And then after the Industrial Revolution, that really changed. You don't have as many farmers. You have a few still, but not as many, because you have more productivity. You don't need plantations of people. That was always the issue, was like slavery. Slavery was becoming economically not a good model to begin with. Like even in the South, it was cheaper to get the modern equipment. So, you didn't need blacks to pick cotton. You could get cotton picking machines, and more efficient, faster, the whole bit. But the idea was, well, but there's other jobs in manufacturing. And then you start to see manufacturing jobs go recently in the 80s because of robotics. And it's like, oh, well, everyone just go into computer programming. But now computer programming, what hasn't been outsourced to Indians, is being AI can do it. And pretty soon there's not much left for humans to do, at least for the mass of people. So what do you do with them? Are they supposed to just starve or die? I don't think that's going to go. Not many people have really brought that issue up. Andrew Yang did bring that up years ago. Unfortunately, he was a weak man and he got bullied by the Democrats because he says some nice things about white people. But it is still a real issue. It really is. And I've never heard anyone explain how this would work. I mean, let's do a thought experiment. I'm not saying we're going to be at this point, but let's do a thought experiment. Imagine you could create robots that are just like people, can do whatever people can do, but better. And, they can do janitor work. They can do fast food work. They can be actors. Already now I've seen this. We're at this point. Actors can be replaced now by AI. I've seen it. It's already, you got these people that aren't real people. They look real. And we're getting at that point. So the point is, if all these people are losing their jobs, what are they supposed to do? If you can get robots to do the exact same thing. And no one's really been able to answer that, except for what's not going to happen. Well, that's a hope. We're seeing it happen. Or, well, there's something new. They'll fix the robots. Well, even if you need a few people to fix the robots, it's not going to replace all the jobs. So this is the real issue. Now, in my system of government, it really wouldn't be a problem, because I would have a government that actually cares about the people, and we wouldn't destroy technology, but it'd be like, wow, we're having all this additional wealth. We can start giving it back to the people. I know this heresy. It's almost like Andrew Yang's guaranteed income, but why not? You bring in all this and give it back to the people. Maybe instead of having a 40-hour work week, make it 20 hours, but same pay because you have your productivity higher. There's a lot of things that can be done, I think. And I think we're going to need leaders that are able to look at this and see what it can mean for humanity. Because ideally, it should be like paradise. You don't have to do horrible work. Like, who really wants to clean toilets, right? You can spend your time doing stuff you want. But there's another side of it is are humans meant to do work? And it was sort of like the idea, the dream of the internet. We have the internet, and because of that, people would spend their days just learning all this wonderful things. So if we give little black kids connection to the internet, they're going to learn about history, science, chemistry, or whatever. And it's like, no, most people use the internet to watch porn or play games. So there is a problem there. And what do we do with that? Because most people, if they have free time, they're not going to spend it drawing beautiful paintings or writing poetry or whatever bullshit they thought. It's going to be just, watching porn and playing games. And is that good for the human soul? Will that create other issues? I don't have all the answers, but these are big issues that we're going to be facing here. And again, most people, especially even on our side, we don't like to talk about it because it kind of sounds like socialism then, because we've always assumed, we got to sell your labor, right? You work hard, and you make money, save up money, and you buy your stuff, right? But if you can't sell your labor anymore, what do? And I don't think as a conservative, the answer is, you just have to fucking die. That's what you have to do. Yep, you just have to die. I don't think people are going to go for that, right? So I'm not exactly I am a capitalist fan, but I do think the government, this is a radical idea, and I'm not going to do salutes, but the government should help direct business for the good of the citizens. But I know that sounds radical, that's what I think should happen. All right, let's see here. So we're funding that big, huge AI project. It should be interesting to see what happens for that. But this idea that AI is going to be the new industry that creates a lot of jobs, no, it's going to replace jobs. And we're going to have to work through how that happens. That was actually, just as a aside, I watched the movie 2001: A Space Odyssey the other day. I watched it years ago, but I watched it again. It was like on Netflix. I get Netflix free, I think, or was it Amazon Prime? I get those free because of my phone plan. And looking back at 2001: Space Odyssey, Stanley Kubrick had a different levels to it. But one of the messages I think of the movie was, going from like 8 men with the first tool to eventually our ultimate tool, how the computer is that eventually our tools can end up stripping us of humanity. And so there's going to be a real debate there. It used to be more of a science fiction thing, but it's becoming real. All right. Well, to go back now to the January 6th about the horrible conditions and the corruption of our justice system. I picked a J6 case at random to review because I wanted to see how bad it was. And let me tell you, the random one I picked did not disappoint. This defendant went into the Capitol and walked down the corridor. He was not accused of violence. He did not break anything. And remember, this was after 2 years where they allowed BLM and Antifa to literally set fires and kill people with no penalty. He did not hurt anyone. He was sentenced by a jury to 19 months in prison. He was overcharged by a prosecutor to the point where it should have been called malicious prosecution. And a judge rubber stamped every single thing the prosecutor asked for. The most egregious part of these filings was that the government introduced a 22-minute video montage that spliced together key breaches that occurred that day. They introduced that video to the jury, even when the defendant in question is only shown on that video for less than 60 seconds. So he wasn't violent. I'm not going to read this all. But this shows how prejudicial and really a witch hunt that all was. And they had a jury, bunch of federal employees. It was horrible malfeasance of our justice system. And it's not enough just to pardon these people. These judges need to be arrested and these prosecutors need to be arrested and they need to be thrown into prison. I 100% believe that. We got to clear these people out. And it is shocking what happened then. And January 6th is going to be rehabilitated. It's going to be called Patriots Day. It was a day people stood up against a corrupt government. And I think we should celebrate it every day on January 6th. And it was interesting because in modern terms, they were trying to make January 6th into the new Holocaust. There's a lot of similarities between the two, actually. But they were trying to make it into the new religion. And it looks like that has been derailed. So that is a good thing here. All right, here. One of the things that, people are asking, why did woke kind of disappear? It seems to have crumbled really quick. And one of the reasons is because I believe we have the truth. Woke is a denial of the truth. It's trying to enforce a fantasy. And eventually, it's the old story of the kids saying that the emperor has no clothes. You remember the emperor was naked, but he was just saying he has such fine clothes, it's just beautiful. And finally, one of the kids just said the obvious, no, he's just naked. And then all the facade crumbled. And I think the whole trans issue did that. That was really what crumbled all of woke. So thank you, transgender. You guys have helped to destroy it all, which is good. And here's an example that this is a bridge too far for most people. This guy, although, just a while ago, in England, you would go to jail if you were saying this is a man. You would have to say he's a woman because he claims to be a woman. And if you say otherwise, you're the hater. And in England, probably Canada, you would go to jail. So this guy, or what he calls himself a girl, and what he likes to do is he likes to go in locker rooms and show his penis to little girls and women. And years ago, we would just call this guy a pervert, a predator, and he should be in prison a long time. But now they're trying to say, no, this is a woman, and she's there getting naked and playing with her penis in front of the little kids. This is what really broke everything. Not just this story, but there are many themes like this where you have these sexual predators that have found that they can play pretend that they're women, and then that gives them a right to go into girls' locker rooms and masturbate. And if you're opposed to this, you're the bigot, you're the transphobe. This was a bridge too far saying that this thing is a girl. It's a denial of reality. It's an insult to our humanity to have to lie about something that everyone knows this is just a perverted man. It's not a woman. I don't care what he says. And he should be put in prison for a long time. But that is what really, I think, broke the whole woke thing. Because then it's all starting to go now. It's like a domino effect. It's going pretty quick, too. Because once everyone... It's kind of a spell that was broken. I think COVID and George Floyd and all that, it just ramped up the insanity to 11. On a scale of 1 to 10, it went to 11, just total craziness. And I think everyone's like, whoa, what the hell just went on there? And stuff like that really broke it. So that is good news, but it is, people are not willing to say, parents, even liberals secretly are like, wait a minute, do I want my 6-year-old little girl to be around this fucking predator in the locker room as he's pulling out his penis? And he's saying, I'm just a woman. Don't be a transphobe. Fuck you. You need to go to jail, piece of shit pervert. That's what we're fighting against. So that helped to break the woke thing. And I think that was good. So thank you. I don't believe in trans anyway. And in fact, that's against the U.S. policy now. We just have male and female. There is no such thing as trans. You can say that you're a woman. You can be a man and you can claim to be a woman. You can be a man and claim to be a bird. You can be a man and claim to be a dolphin. Didn't they do that in South Park? You can make all those claims, but it doesn't make it true. It's just that you're a fucked up man. That's all it means. You're a fucked up man making these claims. And we are not obligated to go along with your delusions. I won't do it. Fuck off. And I'm not going to say that bald-headed guy that exposes himself is a woman. He isn't. And I think people have had enough of that. And we're not playing your fucking games of speech control that we got to pretend that is a girl. It's not a girl. It is outrageous. So, yeah, that is good news. That kind of went away. All right. Let's see what else is here. This was kind of funny. Kamala Harris, the drunk. She is now blaming, not herself, for her defeat against Donald Trump. No, the person that's to blame, she says, is her husband. Could you imagine being married to such a bitch like her? I don't even find her attractive. But she's said Kamala Harris marriage in turmoil as she blames dead weight husband Doug Emhoff for election defeat. This is common. Women do this a lot. They blame others for their failures. Men do too, but you could tell that she's really pissed off at her husband because they have an unnatural relationship. He was going to be like the first lady. Obviously, she has no attraction to this guy. And any outsider, I don't know if you guys, I never even thought that he was at all responsible for her defeat. I mean, I could think of like 100 other things responsible. Tim Walz, her picking that cuck from Minnesota that tried to pretend to be like a regular guy, or them funding the white guys for Harris that turned out to be a lot of homosexuals from Hollywood. That didn't work out well. Or Kamala Harris, not just saying, all these illegals that come into the United States, I don't think necessarily that taxpayers should have to pay for their sex change operations. She couldn't even say that. That pissed a lot of people off. So, I mean, you could go down the line of all the reasons she lost. But to blame Doug Emhoff, and I'm not a fan of him, but this is just crazy. So, I look for them to probably get divorced. I don't know. Maybe she could run off with Hillary or something. But yeah, so I'm not surprised that happened. They never really seemed to be that close of a couple anyway. But that's the way it is there. All right. We'll talk a little bit about how we need to restore America and get rid of some savage superstitions. This was a joke. I mean, I think she needs to be removed from the court. It's just making a mockery of the court. It'd be like, nominating a horse to the consul of Rome. Was that Caligula or Nero? I think it was Caligula. It's just making a mockery of the institution. So we have Ketanji Jackson, and she wore these shells at the inauguration. And people from West Africa, they think these shells are magical and they ward off evil. That's juju. So she believes in this primitive mythology of her people. And if you ever listen to her, she's probably got an IQ of maybe 80 or 90. Very stupid woman. I don't even know if she can read. And she's on the Supreme Court. We got to fix that. She needs to be removed. The joke's over. It's no longer funny. It's like that bald guy showing his penis saying he's a woman. Calling her a Supreme Court justice is just making a mockery out of the situation. It'd be like if I put my dog Button on the Supreme Court, although Button probably do better. But it's just making a mockery out of the situation. And that's where we are right now. Speaking of which, let's look at the mayor of Philadelphia. She got all excited about, I guess in our sports ball team, the Eagles are doing really well. That's a football team from Philadelphia. So she wanted to lead a chant where they spell the name of the Eagles in a chant, right? So let's listen to her. Here we go.
E-L-G!
E-L-G?
S-E-S! Eagles! birds.
She can't spell eagles. Let's listen to this again. It's Eagles, right? Eagles. Let's see her try to do this.
E-L.
E-L? Algles?
G-S-E-S. Eagle.
What the hell?
Let's go, birds.
Yeah, we don't need this anymore. I mean, okay, the joke's not funny anymore. We don't need people that are previously would be in an institution for developmentally delayed people as mayors. And this is what we get here. So, yeah. All right. It's going to be interesting. I will go to Russia now, what's happening. And a lot of the stuff, we get a lot of reports. I don't know how much is true or not, but it looks like Trump's policy, he's putting a lot of pressure on both Ukraine and Russia. And I'm not surprised. That's how Trump negotiates. But supposedly the U.S. has informed Ukraine they can just forget about getting back the 4 Russian regions and Crimea. So what Russia has taken in the Donbass, which to be fair, the people there are ethnic Russians. They want to be part of Russia. That's not going back to Ukraine. Crimea, again, is Russian. It's not going to Ukraine. And Zelensky's response is we won't accept those terms even if our allies insist. Well, Zelensky really don't have much of a say in that because Trump could say, hey, I tried to get him to talk, but Zelensky was unreasonable. So, good luck to Zelensky. We Americans, we're washing our hands of the matter. God bless you. If you want to bitch to, beg to Europe, like Britain or Germany or France, although they're getting tired too. And Europe is weak. They don't really have much manufacturing. They're mostly about trying to bring the third world in to rape their children. That's what they're about now. And arresting you if you object to it. So they don't really have much of a military, but okay, Europe, you can have it. And that will be the collapse of Ukraine then. I think this is what Trump is doing. He's putting pressure on Putin too, saying, you better negotiate, Putin, otherwise I'm going to even hit you with more sanctions. But what's interesting, Putin's saying, we've always been willing to negotiate. It's Ukraine and NATO that's refused it. So I think there's a little posturing there that Trump's doing. But if anyone can fix the mess, it's Trump. I thought it's next to impossible, but I think he can do it. So that would be good to see. Hey, I got a super chat from my friend K-Mex McDonald's. How are you doing, K-Mex? It's good to see you. Let me scroll down so I can bring it up. And Killikami, thank you for your super chat the other day. I read that at the start of the show. $20. Ram's view on comparing Trump to the presidents of the past. It's kind of like an Andrew Jackson. I think he has a portrait of Andrew Jackson in his office, Old Hickory. Some say comparing him to John F. Kennedy, is he any further right on social issues? I just think that the media shifted so far to the left and he appears far right by that standard. Yeah, I mean, you got to figure how crazy America's become. Even Obama was initially against gay marriage, a stupid idea. We shouldn't allow gay marriage. It's ridiculous. And all the previous presidents until recently, they opposed open borders. And so it is really crazy how far left it's become. And Trump really isn't really that radical right based on historical standards. It's just based on how crazy woke everything has become recently that makes him look that way. And I don't know if I'd compare him to JFK. JFK was always, the Kennedy family always had a lot of power and they were part of the establishment. Whereas Trump is more like Andrew Jackson. He's more of a turn over the tables, kind of like Jesus throwing out the money changers. So Trump is more of a bull in a china shop, that's for sure. Whereas the Kennedy family was all more connected. Thank you though for that. Very generous. All right. Franklin Graham talked about, now we'll do a little thing about that lesbian in the Episcopalian church. I think it's Franklin Graham tells me on my podcast that the National Cathedral has fallen into the hands of the LGBT activists. Well, I would say, sadly, much of the Christian church has fallen and is apostate. It's no longer Christian. And I'm not saying that loosely, because definitionally, what it means to be a Christian is you follow the teachings of Christ and the apostles. Because we as Christians believe, you may not believe this, that's fine, but we believe that the Bible, the scripture, was inspired by God, the Holy Spirit. So when the Apostle Paul writes something, it's not his opinion, it's God's opinion. And God has dictated that homosexuality is a sin. God has dictated that women should not be preachers or priests. That's very clear. There's no question about it. The Episcopal Church has decided to reject those. Okay, but then they're rejecting that the scripture is God's word, and therefore they're rejecting Christianity. So I would argue the modern Episcopalian Church, and I'm not just picking on Episcopalians, there's a lot of other denominations, I would say they're no longer Christian. And we shouldn't have a national cathedral. Well, I'm not against having a national cathedral, but these aren't Christians. These are more like Satanists. And I mean the modern Satanists, not like where they dress in black, but Satanists do whatever you want, abort babies and embrace sexual degeneracy. So Franklin Graham is right about that. So it's not surprising this lady bishop spewed hate at Donald Trump today. The National Cathedral has become a sanctuary of Satan. It has. It has become very satanic, meaning opposed to God. It promotes things that are evil based on what God has said. And again, you may not agree. You may think Christianity is a bunch of nonsense. Okay, that's another debate. But if you believe in Christianity, you cannot support homosexuality. You cannot support women in positions of authority like that. That is anti-scripture. So, yeah, this is what happens, and it doesn't surprise me. If I was president, I wouldn't subject myself to this nonsense. I would say this no longer Christian. I'm a Christian. The Episcopalians are no longer Christians. So, to hell with that. And again, I don't mean to offend people, because I used to attend Episcopalian church, but it has become apostate. And what's the Bible predicted would happen, by the way. And just because you have the word Christian in front of your name doesn't make you a Christian, right? They reject the foundations of Christianity, so they're not Christian. It'd be like saying you're a vegetarian, but you promote eating meat. Well, if you're promoting eating meat, you're not a vegetarian. No matter, you could call yourself a vegetarian, but if you're eating a steak, it's like, well, you're not really one. You're just saying it, but you're not one. They're wearing a religion as a skin suit because they know this was a Christian nation. The founding fathers, most of them were Christians of various types. And someone like her, she's not a Christian. She rejects Christ. She rejects the Bible. She's living in sin. She advocates sin. No one's perfect, but she actually advocates evil. And someone doesn't need to be lectured by someone that rejects God and Christ and the Bible and listen to her pontificate about how evil Trump is. Trump has no obligation to listen to that. So we need to just get rid of this. Sorry about this. Donald Joy. Elon says he'll fund Tommy Robinson's legal defense. Yeah, that's good. I hope he does. Tommy Robinson, I know he has his issues, but he's been strong against the Islamic invasion of Britain. And so that is a good thing. My hope is America always leads and then the rest of the West follows. And we led, sadly, in the West in really down a path of evil with wokeism, promoting sexual evil, promoting anti-whiteism. And that spell has recently been pretty well broken in the United States. I'm hoping other countries follow suit because other countries like Britain and Canada, they're just insane, anti-white, anti-anything, right? Almost to the point, if an immigrant, Islamic immigrant should stab your child to death, and your child bleeds on his clothes, you'll probably go to jail for bleeding on the clothes. It's just crazy. These people are insane. But there is some pushback, and that leads me into my next thing. We're seeing from the leader. Let's see here. Talking about how the West has lost its way here. So let's take it. This is the president of Argentina. And let me bring this up here. And so we're getting a lot of people pushing back on this. And we can either call it evil. It is evil. And let's don't, they're not mistaken. This is evil ideology. And we're not going to watch this all. But he pushes back here on this foundation wokeism was built, an ideology of monolithic thinking. It's a cult that you can't deviate from. You see it. People that believe in this woke stuff, they won't even associate with people or have a conversation with people that disagree with them. It's a cult withheld by various institutions whose purpose is to penalize dissent. Feminism needs to be abolished. Diversity needs to be abolished. Inclusion abolished. Equity abolished. Immigration abolished. Abortion abolished. Environmentalism abolished. Gender ideology. They've all been weaponized in the evil manner. And this is the president of Argentina. We're getting more and more people speaking out against this evil in our world. So good for that. He called gender ideology child abuse. It's the most horrific form of child abuse. When you take an innocent child and you sexually mutilate them permanently because of your fucking fad cult. If Heaven Gate did it, if we had a religious group in the, say, backwoods of Arkansas that castrated little boys as part of their cult, they would go to jail, be sent probably to death penalty. But we have these so-called doctors doing this under the guise of gender ideology, gender affirming care. Fuck them. They need to be arrested and face the death penalty for what they did. Face the death penalty if convicted. There's nothing worse than sexually mutilating a child. And these aren't doctors. These are evil people, butchers, and that needs to stop. So, yeah, that is a situation there. And finally, we'll just show you some of because there's that fake outrage about Elon Musk doing a Hitler salute. Well, here's other people who have done Hitler salutes in the day, right? Elizabeth Warren, and there's Hillary Clinton doing a Hitler salute, Obama, and Tulsi, is that Tulsi? Or Michelle. So all these Hitler salute people. And it's just ridiculous. And we got to get beyond that and start to laugh at this nonsense. And so that would be good. All right. So let's see here. I think I'm about finished for the day. It's been good to be with you guys today. So today's Thursday. So let's see. Tomorrow's Friday. And I do the RAMZPAUL show on Fridays too, but it'll be Friday evening at 8 p.m. I enjoy doing my evening shows on Friday. So I'll see you guys tomorrow evening, and hope you guys have a great day. Talk to you guys later. Bye-bye.